Chapter 27 Theoretical Music from Nicomachus. While describing Pythagoras' wisdom in instructing his disciples, we must not fail to note that he invented the harmonic science and ratios. But to explain this, we must go a little backwards in time. Once, as he was intently considering music and reasoning with himself whether it would be possible to devise some instrumental assistance to the sense of hearing, so as to systematize it, as sight is made precise by the compass rule and telescope, or touch is made reckonable by balance and measures. So thinking of these things, Pythagoras happened to pass by a brazier's shop, where providentially he heard the hammers beating on a piece of iron on the anvil. Wait, didn't I read this in the last one? I must have mislabeled it. I remember this now. Hold on. We're going to 28. Mutual political assistance. Hold on. Do I remember this? This is the way in which music is said to have been discovered by Pythagoras, having reduced it to a system. Yeah. I remember this. God damn it. I gotta update that last video. That's what I get for being unprofessional. Go. Get the fuck out of my face. Come on. Yeah. Oh, wait, did I miss? Oh, no. I thought that was 27. I can't even read my own thing. Chapter 27. Mutual Political Assistance. Many deeds of the Pythagoreans in the political sphere are deservedly praised. At one time the Croatians were in the habit of making funerals and interments too sumptuous. Thereupon one of them said to the people that once he had heard Pythagoras converse about divine natures, during which he had observed that the Olympian divinities attended to the dispositions of the sacrificers, and not to the multitude of offerings. The terrestrial gods, on the contrary, as being interested in less important matters, rejoiced in lamentations and banquets, libations, delicacies, and obsequial pomp. I don't even know what that is. And as proof thereof, the divinity of Hades is called Pluto, from his wish to receive. Those that honor him slenderly he does not much care for, and permits to stay quiet a little while, but he hastens to draw down those disposed to spend profusely on funeral solemnities, that he may obtain the honors offered in commemoration of the dead. The result was that the Crotonians that heard this advice were persuaded that if they conducted themselves moderately in misfortunes, they would be promoting their own salvation, but would die prematurely if immoderate in such expenses. A certain difference arose about an affair in which there was no witness. Pythagoras on. A Pythagorean was made arbitrator, and he led both litigations to a certain monument, announcing that the man buried was exceedingly equitable. The one prayed that he might receive much reward for this good life, while the other declared that the defunct was no better off for his opponent's prayers. The Pythagorean condemned the latter, confirming that he who praised the dead man for his worth had earned credibility. In a cause of great moment, this Pythagorean decided that one of the two who has agreed to settle that affair by arbitration should pay 4 talents, while the other should receive 2. Then from him who had received 2 he took 3 and gave them to the other, so that each had been mulcted 1 talent. Yeah. That's pretty confusing. 2 persons had fraudulently deposited a garment with a woman who belonged to a court of justice, and told her that she was not to give it to either of them unless both were present. Later, with intent to defraud, one claimed and got the common deposit, saying he had the consent of the other party. The other one turned informer and related the compact made at the beginning to the magistrates. A certain Pythagorean, however, as arbitrator, decided that the woman was guiltless, construing the claimed assent as constructive presence. Two persons who had seemed to be great friends, but who had gotten to suspect each other through calumnies of a sycophant, so they believed gossip, who told the one the other had taken undue liberties with his wife. Oh! A Pythagorean happened to enter the smithy where the injured party was finding fault with the blacksmith for not having sufficiently sharpened a sword he had brought with him for that purpose. The Pythagorean, suspecting the use to which the sword was to be put, said, "The sword is sharper than all things except calumny." What? As sharp as anything but your lying tongue. This caused the prospective avenger to consider that he should not rashly sin against his friend who was within on an invitation for the purpose of killing him. What? Am I the only one who doesn't even know what that sentence means? Alright, moving on. A stranger in the temple of Asclepius accidentally dropped his belt, on which were gold ornaments. When he tried to pick it up, he was informed that the temple regulations forbade picking up anything on the floor. He was indignant, and a Pythagorean advised him to remove the golden ornaments which were not touching the floor, leaving the belt which was. That is so Talmudic. During a public spectacle, some cranes flew over the theater. One sailor said to his companion, "Do you see the witnesses?" A Pythagorean nearby hailed them into a court presided over by 1,000 magistrates, where, being examined, they confessed to having thrown certain boys into the sea, who, on drowning, had called on the cranes flying above them to witness to the dead. This story is mistakenly located elsewhere, but it really happened in Crotona. Certain recent disciples of Pythagoras were at variance with each other, and the junior came to the senior, declaring there was no reason to refer the matter to an arbitrator, inasmuch as all they needed to do was to dismiss their anger. The elder agreed, but regretted he had not been the first to make that proposition. We might relate here the story of Damon and Pythias, of Plato and Archytas, and of Cleinias and Prorus. Oh my God, these Greek names, yo. At present, however, we shall limit ourselves to that of Eubulius. Oh my God, Eubulus, the Messenian, who, when sailing homeward, was taken captive by the Tyrrhenians, where he was recognized by a Pythagorean named Nausithous. Hey, I know someone who would get a kick out of that name, who redeemed him from the pirates and sent him home to safety. In safety. How do you send someone home in safety? Is the boat named Safety? When the Carthaginians were about to send 5,000 soldiers into a desert island, the Carthaginian Miltiades saw among them the Argive Pythagorean Poseidon. Excuse me. Approaching him, and without revealing his intentions, he advised him to return home with all possible haste. He placed him in a ship named Safety, then sailing near the shore, supplied him with the travel necessities, and thus saved him from the impending danger. What was the impending danger? He who would try to relate all the fine deeds that beautified the mutual relations of the Pythagoreans would find the task exceedingly space and patience. I don't know what that means. I shall therefore pass on to show that some of the Pythagoreans were competent administrators, adapted to rule. Many were custodians of the laws and ruled over certain Italian cities, enfolding to them and advising them to adopt the most salutary measures, while themselves refusing to pay. Though greatly calumniated, their probability and the desire of their probity and the desire of the citizens prevailed to make them administrators. At this time, the best governed states seem to have been in Italy and Sicily, while the best legislators, Chaetondas the Catian, was a Pythagorean, and so were the celebrated Locrian legislators Zeleucus and Timares. Pythagoreans also were those Reginic polites, called the gymnasiarchic, named after Hercules, excelling in studies and manners which were then adopted by their fellow citizens. Were Pythias, Hercules, and Aristocrates. Indeed, it is said that Pythagoras was the originator of all political erudition. When he said that nothing existent pure, inasmuch as earth particles of fire of air, and air of water, and the water of spirit, likewise, the beautiful participates in the deformed, the just of the unjust, and so on. So that from this principle human impulse may, by proper direction, be turned in either direction. He also said that there were two motions, one of the body, which is irrational, and one of the soul, which is the result of deliberate choice. He also said polities might be likened to three lines whose extremities join, forming a triangle. Oh. Hold on. Alright, I'm back. Alright, where was I? We're just going to start this paragraph over. Had to do something for a little while. Alright. He who would try to relate all the fine deeds that beautiful and mutual relations of the Pythagoreans would find the task exceedingly space and patience, I shall therefore pass on to show that some of the Pythagoreans were competent administrators, adapted to rule. Many were custodians of the laws, and ruled over certain Italian cities, enfolding to them and advising them to adopt the most salutary measures, salutary, while themselves refusing all pay. Though greatly culminated, their probity and the desire of the citizens prevailed to make them administrators. At this time, the best governed states seem to have been in Italy and Sicily. One of the best legislators, Chaetondas, the Cataean, was a Pythagorean, and so were the celebrated Locrian legislators, Zeleucus and Timares. Pythagoreans also were those Reginic polities, called the gymnasiarchic, named after Hercules, excelling in studies and manners which were then adopted by their fellow citizens, were Pythias, Hercules, Elycaon, and Aristocrates. Indeed, it is said that Pythagoras was the originator of all political erudition, when he said that nothing existent pure, inasmuch as earth participates of fire, fire of air, and air of water, and water of spirit. Likewise, the beautiful participates in the deformed, the just of the unjust, and so on. So that from this principle, human impulse may, by proper direction, be turned in either direction. He also said that there were two motions, one of the body, which is irrational, and one of the soul, which is the result of deliberate choice. He also said polities, I don't even know. He also said polities might be likened to three lines whose extremities join, forming a triangle containing one right angle, the lines being 4, 3, and 2, so that one of them is as 4 to 3, another as 5 to 2, and the other 3 is the arithmetical medium between 2 and 4. Now, when by reasoning we study the mutual relations of these lines and the places under them, we shall find that they represent the best image of a polity. Plato plagiarized, for in his Republic he clearly says that the result of the 4 to 3 ratio, conjoined with the 5, produced two harmonies. This means that he cultivated the moderation of the passions, and the middle path between extremes, rendering happy the life of his disciples by relating to them the ideals of the good. We are also told that he persuaded the Crotonians to give up associations with courtesans and prostitutes. Crotonian wives came to Dine, the wife of the Pythagorean Brontius, who was a wise and splendid woman, the author of the maxim that it was proper for women to sacrifice on the same day they had risen from the embraces of their husbands, which some ascribe to Pythagoras' wife, Theano, and entreated to persuade Pythagoras to discourse to them on their continuance as due to their husbands. This she did, and Pythagoras accordingly made an address to the Crotonians, which successfully ended the then prevalent incontinence. While ambassadors came from Sybaris to Crotona to demand the return of the exiles, and Pythagoras, seeing as one of the ambassadors who with his own hand had slain one of Pythagoras' friends, made no answer whatever. But when this man insisted on an explanation and addressed Pythagoras, the latter said it was unlawful to converse with murderers. This induced many to believe he was Apollo. All these stories, together with what he mentioned above about the destruction of tyrants and the democratization of the cities of Italy and Sicily, and many other circumstances, are eloquent of the benefits conferred on mankind by Pythagoras. By Pythagoras, in political respects. Gosh, why am I so tired today? Oh yeah, because I work my fucking ass off. 28. The divinity of Pythagoras. Henceforward we shall confine ourselves to the works flowing from Pythagoras' virtues. As usual, we shall begin from the divinities, endeavoring to exhibit his piety and marvelous deeds of his piety. Let this be a specimen. That he knew what his soul was, whence it came into the body, and also its former lives, of this giving the most evident indications. Again, once passing over the river Nessus, along with many associates, he addressed the river, which, in a distinct and clear voice, in the hearing of all his associates, answered, "Hail, Pythagoras." Further, all his biographers insist that during the same day he was present in Metapontum in Italy and at Tauromenium in Sicily, discoursing with his many disciples in both places. Although these cities are separate both by land and sea and by stadia, the travelling over which consumes many days, it is also a matter of common report that showed his golden thigh to the Hyperborean Abaris. What is a golden thigh? Who said that he resembled the Apollo worshipped among the Hyperboreans, and of whom Abaris was the priest, and that he had done this so that he was not deceived therein. Excuse me. A myriad of other more admirable and divine particulars are likewise unanimously and uniformly related to the man, such as infallible predictions of earthquakes, rapid expulsions of pestilence and hurricanes, instantaneous cessation of hail, tranquilizations of the waves of rivers and seas, in order that his disciples might the more easily pass over them. The power of effecting miracles of this kind was achieved by Empedocles of Agrigentum, Epimenides the Cratian, and Abaris the Hyperborean. And these persons performed them in many places. Their deeds were so manifest that Empedocles was surnamed the Wind Stiller, Epimenides the Expiator, and Abaris an Air Walker. Because carried on the dart given him by the Hyperborean Apollo, he passed over rivers and seas and inaccessible places like one carried on air. Many think that Pythagoras did the same thing, when in the same day he discoursed with his disciples at Metapontum and Tauromenium. It is also said that he predicted there would be an earthquake from the water of a well which he had tasted, and that a ship was sailing with a prosperous wind would be submerged in the sea. These are sufficient proofs of his piety. Pitching my thoughts on a higher key, I wish to exhibit the principle of the worship of the gods, established by Pythagoras and his disciples, that the mark aimed at by all plans, whether to do or not to do, is consistent with the divinity. The principle of their piety, and indeed their whole life, is arranged with a view to follow God. Their philosophy explicitly asserts that men act ridiculously in searching for good from any source other than God, and that, in respect, the conduct of most men resembles that of a man who, in a country governed by a king, should reverence one of the city magistrates, neglecting him who is the ruler of all of them, since God exists as the Lord of all things, including yawns. It is evident and acknowledged that good must be requested of him. All men impart good to those they love and admire, on the contrary to those they dislike. Evidently we should do those things in which God delights. Not easy, however, is it for a man to know which these are, unless he obtains this knowledge from one who has heard God, or has heard God himself. That's redundant. Or procures it through divine art. Ask a magician. Hence, also, the Pythagoreans were studious of divination, like I said, which is an interpretation of the benevolence of the gods. That such an employment is worthwhile, while being admitted by one who believes in the gods. But he who thinks that either of these is folly will also be of opinion that both are foolish. Many of the precepts of the Pythagoreans derived from the mysteries. Pythagoras should be received as referring not to a mere man but to a superman. This is also what is meant by their maxim, that man, bird, arbiter, another thing, are bipeds. I don't know what those words are supposed to be. That man, bird, another thing are bipeds. What? Thereby referring to Pythagoras, Pythagoras. What? He called him a bird man? He's on Thoth patrol. Such, therefore, on account of his piety, was Pythagoras, and such he was truly thought to be, a birdman. Oaths were religiously observed by the Pythagoreans, who were mindful of that precept of theirs. As duly by law thy homage pay first to the immortal gods, then to thy oath, and last to the heroes illustrious. God, yourself, everyone else. In that order. For instance, a Pythagorean was in court and asked to take an oath. Rather than to disobey this principle, although the oath would have been a religiously permitted one, he preferred to pay to the defendant a fine of 3 talents. Pythagoras taught that no occurrence happened by chance or luck, but rather conformably to divine providence, and especially so to good and pious men. This is well illustrated by a story from Androcydes' treatise on Pythagorean symbols about the Tarentine Pythagorean Thymarides. Jesus fucking Christ. He was happening to be sailing away from his country. His friends were all present to bid him farewell and to embrace him. He has friends in both places. He had already embarked when someone cried to him, O Thyramidas, I pray that the gods may shape all your circumstances according into your wishes. According to your wishes. Why is that so hard? But he retorted, can't you say replied, predict me better things, namely that what may happen to me may be comfortable to the will of the gods. For he thought it more scientific and prudent not to resist or grumble against divine providence. Or yawns, for that matter. God. If asked about the source whence these men derived so much piety, we must acknowledge that the Pythagorean number theology was clearly foreshadowed to some extent in the Orphic writings, nor is it to be doubted that when Pythagoras composed his treatise concerning the gods, he received assistance from Orpheus, wherefore indeed the theological treatise is subtitled, The Learned and Trustworthy Pythagoras Asserted by Telauges, taken from the commentaries left by Pythagoras himself to his daughter Demo, Telauges' sister, and which after her death were said to have been given to Betali, Demo's daughter, and to Telauges, the son of Pythagoras and husband of Betali. I need a chart for that. Of Battalion, when he was of mature age, for he was at Pythagoras' death left very young with his mother Theano. Now who can judge who it was that delivered what there is said of the gods from the Sacred Discourse or treatise on the god, which bears both titles? For we read, Pythagoras, the son of Menshachus, Menesarchus, was instructed in what pertains to the gods when he celebrated orgies in the Thracian Libethra, being therein initiated. God, how tired am I? Being therein initiated by Aglaophemus, and that Orpheus, the son of Calliope, having learned wisdom from his mother in the mountain Pangaeus, said that the eternal essence of number is the most providential principle of the universe, of heaven and earth, and of the intermediate nature, and further still, that it is the root of the permanency of divine natures, of gods and divinities. From this it is evident that he learned from the Orphic writers that the essence of the gods is defined by number. Through the same numbers also he produced a wonderful prognostication and worship of the gods, both of which were particularly allied to numbers. As conviction is best produced by an objective fact, the above principle may be proved as follows. When the Hyperborean performed such rites according to his customs, he procured a foreknowledge of events, which is studiously cultivated by all the barbarians, by sacrificing animals, especially birds, not birdmen, but just birds, for they think that the entrails of such animals are particularly adapted to this purpose. Pythagoras, however, not wishing to suppress his ardent pursuit of the truth, but to guide it to a safer way without blood and slaughter, and also because he thought that a cock was sacred to the sun, furnished with him a consummate knowledge of all truth. Through arithmetical science, from piety also, he derived faith concerning the gods. From Pythagoras always insisted that nothing marvelous concerning gods or divine teachings should be disbelieved, inasmuch as the gods are competent to effect anything. But the divine teachings in which we must believe are those delivered by Pythagoras. Interesting choice of words. The Pythagoreans therefore assumed and believed what they taught in the priori ground, that they were not the offspring of false opinion. Hence Eurytus the Crotonian, the disciple of Philolaus, said that a shepherd feeding his sheep near Philolaus's tomb had heard someone singing, but the person to whom this was related did not at all question this, merely asking what kind of harmony it was. Pythagoras himself also, being asked by a certain person the significance of the converse with his defunct father in sleep, answering that it meant nothing, for neither is anything prepondered by your speaking with me. Wow, that's an interesting way to say, don't talk shit about my dead father. Pythagoras wore clean white garments, and used clean white coverlets, avoiding the woolen ones. This custom he enjoined on his disciples. In speaking of Ubermenschen natures, he used honorable appellations and words of good omen, on every occasion mentioning and reverencing the gods. So while at supper he performed libations to the divinities, and taught his disciples daily to celebrate the superhuman beings with hymns. He attended likewise to rumors and omens, prophecies and lots, and in short to all unexpected circumstances. Moreover, he sacrificed to the gods with millet cakes, honeycombs, and fumigations. But he did not sacrifice animals, nor did any of the contemplative philosophers. His other disciples, however, the hearers and the politicians, were by him ordered to sacrifice animals, such as cock or a lamb, or some other young animal. but not frequently. But they were prohibited from sacrificing oxen. Yes, everyone just leave the oxen alone. Even Indians understand that. Another indication of the honor he paid the gods was his teaching that the disciples must never use the names of the divinities uselessly in swearing. For instance, Silas, one of the Crotonian Pythagoreans, paid a fine rather than swear, though he could have done so without violating the truth. Just as the Pythagoreans abstained from using the names of the gods also through reverence, they were unwilling to name Pythagoras, indicating him who they meant by the invention of the Tete Tractus. Such is the form of an oath ascribed to them. Wait a second. So they called him Tete Tractus? Or they had a piece of paper with them at all times with the Tete Tractus drawn upon it, like, who you talking about? Oh, this guy. Oh shit, he's the Tete Tractus. I swear by the discoverer of the Tete Tractus, which is the spring of all our wisdom, the perennial fount and root of nature. That's a big-ass name, bro. In short, the discoverer of the Tete Tractus imitated the Orphic mode of writing and pious disposition, the way they honored the gods, God damn it. In short, the discoverer of the Tete Tractus imitated the Orphic mode of writing and pious disposition, the way they honored the gods representing. These word choices, man. Them images over there, and in brass, not resembling our human form, but the divine receptacle of the sphere, because they comprehend and provide for all things, being of a nature and form similar to the universe. Because we are all made of stars. But his divine philosophy and worship was compound. Not compounded for some reason, but compound, having learned much from the Orphic followers, but much also from the Egyptian priests, the Chaldeans and Magi, the mysterious Eleusis, Imbris, Samothracia, and Delos, and even the Celtic and Iberian. It is also said that Pythagoras' Sacred Discourse is current among the Latins, not being read to or by all, but only by those who are disposed to learn the best things, avoiding all that is base. He ordered that libations should be made thrice, observing that Apollo delivered oracles from the tripod. Not the iPod, although you might be hearing this on an iPod, but a tripod. The Triad being the first number. Sacrifices to Venus were to be made on the 6th day, because this number is the first to partake of every number, and when divided in every possible way, receives the power of the numbers subtracted, and those that remain. Sacrifices to Hercules, however, should be made on the 8th day of the month, counting from the beginning, commemorating his birth on the 7th month. Hercules was born July 8th. What? He ordained that those who entered into a temple should be clothed in a clean garment, in which no one had slept, because sleep, just as brack and brown, what the fuck, indicates sluggishness, while cleanliness is a sign of equality and justice in reasoning. If blood should be found unintentionally spilled in a temple, there should be made a lustration, either in a golden vessel or with seawater, gold being the most beautiful of all things in the measure of exchange to everything else, while the latter was derived from the principle of moistness, the food of the first and more common matter. Also, children should not be brought forth in a temple, where the divine part of the soul should not be bound to the body. On a festal day, neither should the hair be cut, nor the nails pared, It is also unworthy to disturb the worship of the gods, to attend to our own advantage. Nor should lice be killed in a temple, as divine powers should not participate in anything superfluous or degrading. The gods should be honored with cedar, laurel, cypress, oak, and myrtle. Nor should the body be purified with these, nor any of them be cut with the teeth. He also ordered that what is boiled should not be roasted, signifying hereby the mildness has no need of anger. The bodies of the dead he did not suffer to be burned, herein following the Magi, being unwilling that anything so divine as fire should be mingled with mortal nature. He thought it holy for the dead to be carried out in white garments, thereby obscurely prefiguring the simple and first nature, according to number and the principle of all things. Carried out? Carried out where? To the funeral pyre? What the fuck, Pythagoras? Above all, he ordained that an oath should be taken religiously, since that which is behind the furtherity of punishment is long. He said it was much more holy to be a man injured than to kill a man. For judgment is pronounced in Hades, where the soul and its essence and the first nature of things is correctly appraised. He ordered that coffins should not be made of cypress, either because the scepter of Jupiter was made of this wood or for some other mystic reason. Excuse me. The libations were to be performed before the altar of Jupiter, the savior of Hercules, and the Dioscuri. Dioscuri, what the fuck? Thus celebrating Jupiter as the presiding cause and leader of the meal, Hercules as the power of nature, and the Dioscuri as the symphony of all things. Libations should not be offered with closed eyes, as nothing beautiful should be undertaken with bashfulness and shame. When it thundered, one ought to touch the heart in remembrance of the generation of things. Yeah, man, speak from the heart. What do the Nogs say? Say it with your chest. Temples should be entered from places on the right hand and left from the left hand, for the right hand is the principle of what is called the odd number and is divine, while the left hand is a symbol of the even number and of dissolution. My temple building pattern does begin with the right hand, so maybe I'm onto something. Such are many of the injunctions he is said to have adopted by the pursuance of piety. Other particulars would have been omitted, which have been omitted may be inferred from what has been given. Hence this subject be closed. Alright. I need to smoke some pot. Y'all have a good day.